Awesome. So we'll go ahead and get started here. My name is Kevin Kawchek. I'm the founder CEO of Chemical QDevice here for discussion 111. This is Thursday, November 30th, 2023. And this is the developer seminar for NIH programmers. So we're going to talk about GPUs, Qiskit, PennyLane, which are these are platforms for quantum, and also the quantum algorithms themselves. Now, this title screen is basically a little summary of how things work. So you need to have more RAM, and you need to have either PennyLane, Qiskit, TensorFlow Quantum, Torch Quantum, one of these, for in specific the quantum parameters, these simulated qubits. And you can have both classical, deep learning and quantum deep learning at the same time. It's very possible to do. So I want to start off with just a brief overview for the NIH, which is the National Institutes of Health. It's the nation's medical research agency, which makes important discoveries that improve health and saves lives. So they have four different initiatives, for AI, and just like the FDA, NIH has completely embraced AI at this point, 2023. And so basically, this first one is the Office of Data Science and Strategy Initiatives, sometimes abbreviated ODSS, for catalyzing new opportunities in AI, human and clinical impact concerns. And the big thing is this FAIR. So even though we have abundant data out there, it's not that often that it's complete, meaning that you have a full training set, and then your validation set is similar to it. And then you can get the results that you want, checking the other boxes off as far as bias and, other issues that may arise. So it stands for findable, accessible, interoperable, and reusable healthcare information that's AI ready. So when we say these things, it's not rocket science. You just go on to, Hugging Face has models, PyTorch has models. Would the data set be a good fit? Basically for running, is it the correct size? Do you have enough resources, on the compute side? Do you have enough time? Those types of things too. But that basically, it's been a known issue. That's the number one issue is the data sets, right? They have to be complete. They have to be appropriate. And then the second one is this Bridge to Artificial Intelligence program. And it's basically to set up for widespread AI adoption. They call their new flagship NIH medical data sets. And great extent has gone into collecting data, anywhere from the specifics of the operator running the instruments to the temperature in the room. There's a lot of different factors that come into collecting good data, medical data, like with MRIs for images. And this bridges AI and the two sectors, and I'll mostly be in biomedical, but it's behavioral and biomedical, those three. So AI, behavioral, biomedical. And, also for the dissemination of data, ethical principles, tools, and best practices as well. So the other two are basically they call it AIM Ahead, which stands for Artificial Intelligence, Machine Learning Consortium to Advance Health Equity and Researcher Diversity. So it's to get more underrepresented researchers, to reduce algorithmic biases in EHR data. And the end goal is obviously this would also help with better prevention, diagnoses, and treatments as things are basically more and more encompassing. And the last one here is probably what many people associate NIH with is with the funding. So they have 27 different institutes across the US. And for instance, one of them, the Office of Director, they have this one called Smart and Connected Health. And then you also have the National Library of Medicine for preventing errors with interpretable machine intelligence. So this is basically, trying to open up the black boxes of things. So those two right there. And if you haven't, been following QML/QiML, basically on November 13th, there was 3 different announcements of using this type of, and you could summarize it as GPUs and quantum algorithms. There are certain CPUs arrangements that you can get by, but typically the bulk of the compute power The speed will likely come from GPUs or even TPUs. And by the way, NVIDIA is not the only supplier for these GPUs. AMD does through PennyLane. It's called lightning.cocos for that specific one. So you see the one on the left with Terra Quantum is they said, we're using our hybrid quantum algorithms delivered on NVIDIA GPUs to deliver significant business impact. And, you know, this middle one is actually this company, Classic in Israel. They're an algorithm company, and they partnered with this Tel Aviv hospital in Israel. And they say, you know, leveraging these NVIDIA H100 Tensor cores, which is the same thing. It's a GPU that has Tensor cores. You know, integrating NVIDIA Quantum or QQuantum with their own, you know, the Classic software infrastructure. And then BASF here on the right, these are all on the same day, November 13th, 2023. It's a Monday, a couple Mondays ago. And Sam Stanwyck, he's quite, you know, he's up there as far as like publishing this news for NVIDIA and quantum. So BASF researchers getting up to 60 qubit simulations with these H100s or these GPUs, but inside of a supercomputer. And by the way, I was on a call this week with PennyLane. They say with circuit cutting, which is a technique to minimize the, you know, qubits while they're being processed, they said 100 qubits. Now, I'm not sure if that's full machine learning workflows, but there's limits, you know, with simulation with number of qubits. Hence, you typically go deeper, getting more quantum parameters. And, you know, so basically, if you use circuit cutting, you can basically do all the operations and then stitch everything back together again. And they said with that 100 qubits. And I imagine it getting much, much higher. And actually with tensor networks, you can go, I'll show you in a following slide, over 1,000 qubits, you know, not state vector, but tensor network. So I'll get to that part too. And then the following Monday, so on the 20th, so that was the 13th for those three, Sandbox AQ will leverage NVIDIA quantum platforms to directly simulate the quantum mechanics underpinning modern chemistry, biology, and material science using tensor networks. So you'll hear about these things. So all the research is going on, you know, it's just the results need to get better. And our understanding of quantum mechanics for, say, large or huge data sets now also needs to improve too. And here's a collection of other ones. So the last 365 days. So you see the first one, NVIDIA, 4,000 plus V100 GPUs. And these are not small experiments, you know. So there's advantages of using these simulators. And if you get too high in qubits, you can circuit cut or you can go to tensor networks. QCware as well. This third one here, NERSC in Brookhaven, basically they say accelerating massive simulations of quantum systems, you know, with GPUs. And then Wall Street Journal, and this again, I'll come up to the CEO, one of the chairmen of the board for Sandbox AQ, but basically say quantum equations, quantum software on GPUs. And Sandbox AQ is all over the news with this. They also do the cybersecurity stuff too. And you'll see they have partnerships with they have these, you know, arrangements with AstraZeneca, Sanofi, UC San Francisco, cutting edge physics base, you know, with GPUs. It's just the noise. There's no noise. There's no issue with decoherence. They're readily available. They're relatively low cost compared to other methods. There was a study by ACM that was performed with A100. Basically, today's A100, like I use a 40 gig, is they say it's going to be decades to get, I think it's on the bandwidth perspective, a QPU with, you know, similar type of performance. And then Google's using it for, you know, complex interactions between genes, and then also for embedding systems as well. And then here, so if you're coming from NIH or if you're watching the recording, so here's a bunch of the research that's already been done. So you can see this dates back to 2021 for some of these, and it just depends on the medical area. So you'll see COVID-19, you'll see also rheumatoid arthritis, knee arthritis, Alzheimer's disease. Most of these are images. Some of it's medical, like EHR data, like for arthritis without having the images. But like I said, so Alzheimer's, Parkinson's images, 4-class brain tumor, brain liver tumor. And, it's worth taking a look at all these, and keep in mind, I would consider all of these first generation, like including my research that I did too. And I basically took it up from 2 classes to 44 classes on the next slide. But the more important thing is how they collected the data, how they ran the experiments. And, like as more and more attention goes to QML/QiML, based on the headlines and kind of like the sense that we have with the industry, is we'll likely gain even greater, understanding with the quantum mechanics with the data sets too. So these are the studies that I did. So basically from 2 to 4 to 10 to 44. And then the issue is, obviously the GPU RAM, right? So if I'm limited to like a V100, which is 16 gigabytes, or an A100, which is 40 gigabytes. And when you're up about, 20 qubits for some of these, for the model that equated to 10 classes. So the best results out of all of this was this here in this box, where it says validation accuracy 85.8%, 10 classes. This is 3,500 images. And that was about 11% over my next closest, which was, no quantum algorithm, no QiML, just regular machine learning. And the 44 class was good to do. But in theory, based on the model, I would need 88 qubits, which I might be able to get to if I did some circuit cutting on these larger circuits. But keep in mind, there's some complexities with, number of images, and then also a little bit with classes, but classes, increasing classes more has to do with your results, not bogging down the GPU like the images does. Okay, so this next slide is basically this, like, what is quantum machine learning? And this blue box on the left explains it very well. So it's classical data generating and classical data processing. So essentially you're using classical bits with quantum mechanics. You need a simulator, or actually sometimes you can get by on a laptop, but you're not going to have as much RAM or compute power. And it's basically to get these benefits of quantum algorithms on classical hardware in a way that you don't typically do. And the 2 words that I like to use for this is traditionally or conventionally. Okay. The word classical can kind of get, not make sense in this specific case, but conventionally or traditionally is you have machine learning algorithms like on PyTorch. And, that's where the algorithms are with like a neural network, but in this case, with quantum inspired machine learning there's a separate, quantum machine learning library called PennyLane or Qiskit or TensorFlow Quantum that's taking care of the quantum algorithm, and it also needs additional RAM. Okay, so why use QiML? Why use quantum inspired? It's basically just that. It's technology takes advantage of quantum mechanics with classical hardware devices. And a lot of times, if you want to keep searching for this, you search for GPUs. And I just ran some benchmarkings earlier this week and got like twice the speed off of a PennyLane simulator versus their other CPU one. So lightning.cocos over lightning.qubit. So you'll see some CPU usage too, for inference if you're just doing a single image. But I think the bulk of the heavy lifting is probably going to come from GPUs and some of the TPUs. GPUs are a little bit more heavily marketed. And then on the right, basically, they're grouping these 4 together. So dequantized algorithms, tensor networks, quantum variational algorithm simulation, which is most of what you see. You see some tensor network, and then other methods as well. So most of these, so support vector machine, now you have a quantum support vector machine. So every classical algorithm can be simulated on a quantum algorithm, but it's not always the case in reverse. So that's the important point, is you want to be using quantum algorithms that can't be used or close to be, same performance classically or conventionally, traditional. And I define this a little bit better at the bottom. Like you'll see for FDA and NIH, the term is AI ML, just because some people don't know what machine learning is. It's the same thing with QML/QiML. That's why I'm defining it like that. Many people know what QML is, but they assume it's like some, far out, we're not going to get there anytime soon kind of thing. So QiML is the practical form of quantum machine learning, meaning that you have some of these parameters that are set by the rotations of quantum bits instead of weights and biases that you would normally have. Are there any questions at this point? And then we can always, we'll circle back around too. So this in specific is basically this, I call this the quantum-inspired machine learning growth potential, right? So I talked about this one, so the variational quantum algorithms is currently, these are ubiquitous. They're in many different articles, many different, publications, these types of things. And it's a flexible architecture. So basically you get these accurate quantum states, on your GPUs and CPUs. And it allows for, basically anything you want to do. It's just you're limited by RAM. Okay. So entanglement rich, not a problem. And, there's some limitations to it too. And like I said, with these first gen papers that they did and the research that I performed too, is basically everything's, pushing towards this better performance, potential better speed ups. Now, tensor network algorithms that I was talking about a little bit before is you have access to higher qubits. And actually NVIDIA did this, I think it was 2022, 2021, 800 plus GPUs with 1600 plus qubits. So there's limitations to some tensor networks. Effectively, you can't do as much entanglement. To me, it sounds like the whole thing is just, if we fully understand the benefit of a quantum parameter, optimizing it over the course of the QiML, workflow, is that we should go deeper in networks. However, in some cases, you need more dimensions, and that's what tensor networks are for. So you could have a mix of tensor networks, number two, with variational quantum algorithms. And keep in mind, like all of this, especially with all the news and activity regarding using GPUs with, this technology, will likely getting a lot better, different utilities, different, better accuracies and potential speedups too. Now, number three, higher dimensional qudits. Now, a qubit is effectively, you measure it, it's a quantum bit, and it collapses into a 0 or 1. Now, as you may know, in classical, basically you have bits, and those are zeros and ones. So the whole thing works out well. Now, say if you want to do a 5-class classification, so that'd be a Q, whatever, it's a 5-dimensional qudit in that case, then you'd, in theory, you could only use this one wire, and then you wouldn't have to use as many wires, which are not, cost efficient. So there's been some work with this as a potential quantum universal classifier. And basically, it all goes back to that, right? Like, classical can go to quantum, but some quantum algorithms, simulated can't go back to classical. And what can we, capitalize on the most as far as, classifying different, classes at different parts of a Bloch sphere on the exterior and things like that. Now, this next one is basically dequantized algorithms. So in the for QiML researchers, I think this is actually a very desirable thing to get. So say if you have, a set of algorithms and some of them you can dequantize back into classical, which means that you don't need a quantum simulator, you don't need as much RAM, you're getting that performance that you did with that quantum algorithm, but now it's just a traditional, and I want to hark on that, like when we use these words traditional or conventional, that means that it's something that we're already, the established techniques with algorithms that we use today. So, it's basically, what it means is that it does have a classical algorithm, but again, many times if you're working with QiMLs, you want to work with quantum algorithms that can't go back into classical. So this would just apply for speedups. So this quantum-inspired machine learning paper by Cicero researchers, and this is Australia, is great to see. But it goes on and on and on, and it doesn't talk about anything with accuracy or utility. It's all about speed, okay? So, and again, I see this field growing, this number 4 field growing, and I see additional kind of focus being on it as far as when researchers start off with a QiML algorithm, is that going to stand or is that going to go back into classical? And I don't feel like everybody has a full grasp on that. But in general, If it can get dequantized, it means that you used it as a tool. You use, PennyLane or Qiskit as a tool to get this, more efficient traditional algorithm. And then 5, I included, so this is basically QPU or quantum processing unit assisting QML slash QiML. And, if you watch any of these presentations, for QML researchers, a lot of them work on hardware, but all their results are, on simulators. And people ask, well, isn't that, which did you use, hardware or simulators? Yeah, they're not even close to using it with hardware. And I'll go through that on the following slide here as well. Are there any questions at this point? Okay, and this is basically what I'm talking about. So I updated this one a little bit. So we're going to start with quantum processing units on the left. We're at limited availability, right? So there are some issues with some of these top end GPUs where I have to wait for 5 minutes to reconnect and for my best, collab GPU. But we're not talking nearly what we're talking about with QPUs. It's just, a lot of times that you're placed in the queue for over a day. As far as availability, and then for cost too, the higher qubit ones can cost. And you also have only partial error mitigation with some of these systems. So once you get up to any direction, you're going deeper, you're going wider, deeper, more gates to the right, and then wider, more qubits to the bottom. There's no sweet spot with a lot of them. And as far as I know, everything's still stuck in forward accumulation. So this is not the efficient back propagation that we're seeing with, traditional QiML. And it's basically, parameter shift or finite differences, which are exponentially slower as you increase number of parameters. The output is probabilistic. And I included a link here in one of these, and that what it shows is basically with a quantum computer, it would take forever to get to an exact answer. And for machine learning workflows, you need to keep, evaluating the circuit every single mini batch. Now, the QPUs themselves are density matrices, so they're actually not, they're not on the surface of the block sphere. They're on the interior of the sphere. And it's basically, they're not pure. It's harder math to work with. So all of this comes, together as far as, these, let's see here. Okay. As far as the QML workflows, you'll see here, no exact continuous parameter updates, right? So that's the biggest thing there. And I should be able to, so for the whole package, if you want readily available error-corrected quantum computer with accurate and efficient QML workflows, significant engineering would have to come. And even at that point, is it cost-effective, or, how easy are these to get? So basically, with this one, so on the right is basically, we've been doing QiML for a while. So QML slash QiML, and actually the Cicero paper from Australian researchers basically said that, it should be called quantum inspired machine learning, which is under the umbrella of, QML in this case. And then also with reverse accumulation on this case is it's very similar to back propagation, for classically. So you're using either back propagation or adjoint differentiation. So I've had some success with adjoint. And also with the output of it is you're getting exact answers if it's a deterministic, notebook. And you're dealing with pure quantum states as far as the math. It's a lot less, it's a lot easier to calculate it. So again, it's a good first start with all of these first waves of papers. And, the focus and the shift should definitely go towards, getting the awesome results while we can on quantum simulators on all of this. And, it's basically, we can't wait forever, right, to optimize results for a technology that may never come out. Okay, so this next one is basically, let's see here. Okay, so speed ups with use cases. So in the case of QiML algorithms that aren't dequantized, meaning that they're they're proven you need to have a simulator with. You can't match the performance with any similar classical algorithm. So that's a non-dequantized algorithm. And then also this equates to, you're going to need PennyLane or Qiskit, the extra RAM. And because of the simulation, you're going to lose portion of the speed up. And relative few quantum algorithms have been dequantized at this point. So, just me speaking about it, it definitely seems like, all of this there should be an emphasis up front on which quantum algorithm you're using. Is it going to be dequantized at a later point? And I don't think a lot of the field has quite grasped some of this, right? Because it's a little bit more advanced. And the second case is basically you're using QML or QiML as a tool. And this may be a field in the future where you're just using these software libraries and extra RAM in order to create classical algorithms that we haven't quite thought of using traditional thought methods, okay? So you would get greater speed up in this case compared to case one. And, I see this as being a thing, right? As far as, there are some quantum algorithms that you start off with in because your approach and the way you're thinking of it is quantum. And then it basically, gets put back into classical algorithms. Now, as far as that, because, if you think of it like that, like, you have classical, or if you have these speed ups over here, you have classifications, accuracies, utility over here. And basically, the way that all this is set up is very similar. And I'll show you on a slide a little bit later here, is basically the quantum circuit is the linear component, measurement is nonlinear. And this is basically the same thing as, you have neural networks, and you have to have a linear and nonlinear component. The second thing is it's just classical bits behaving according to quantum mechanics. And then you still get all of these, superpositioning, entanglement, quantum interference effects, simulated. And then PyTorch, you can use, basically you can make a quantum circuit into a layer, and then that layer goes into some PyTorch neural network. And the application of this is basically the quantum sphere is represented by an abstract term called Hilbert space, where you have different classes and you want them to be on complete opposite exterior shells of a specific, the Hilbert space or the block sphere. And we're kind of in this mode of doing gate-based algorithms, and it's probably worth investing a lot of time into also exploring other types of algorithm architectures that would yield these better accuracies and the better utility as well, or new utilities as well. Now, keep in mind with all of this inference, or so say, for instance, like if you're doing a single image and you're using, a model that has, that uses a quantum library, it's going to be slower, because of that, if it's not dequantized. And all these other issues that, basically existed before, these also are in play, with these two. So I want to see if we can come to, towards the end of the talk, we can get into a little bit more detail as far as optimizers. You get better predictions. Yeah, like I said, for one of mine, a lot of it really does depend on your data. So what I found is with my best data set, that's where I got the greatest separation between my traditional and then my QiML approach, which is the quantum transfer learning model. And we can kind of go through that a little bit more in depth later. Okay, so this other thing is that quantum simulators and the software related to it are free or low cost. And I had no idea that there was this many available. And basically, you just have a CPU or, GPUs or multi-GPUs. And Quantiqi, this one outfit, basically said 78 available quantum simulators for researchers to use. Quantum Insider said 63. Now, this is all fine and dandy, but can you access them through the library that you're mostly working on? And that's where PennyLane comes in, because PennyLane has 6 by themselves, because they have default.qubit, default.mixed, lightning.qubit, lightning.gpu, lightning.cocos, and then lightning. One other one. So anyways, they have 6 of their own simulators, which, by the way, tend to have the best performance that I found in multiple benchmarkings. And they also have 29 that, with a pip install, installing this package for these other simulators, you can access. So I referenced that. So 65 through 78. So in those references, there's 29 additional simulators. And then there's also, so Qiskit, they typically just provide these free to the community. So they'll have these, 11 simulators. And you also have a mix of researchers out there. Obviously, I'm more short term. I want to get the benefit and the advantage of using practical hardware today. And there's some longer term approaches that people use with them too, but you can't put it out forever. So, if you don't want to do quantum machine learning and QiML, then there might be hardware opportunities for you. If you want to use hardware to assist QML/QiML, even that's going to be out there too. But if you want to do pure QML/QiML right now, next several years, it's looking like use the simulators. Now, in all these things, it uses the same type of, it's called basic linear algebra subroutines. So Seth Loy at MIT talks about these a lot. And it's matrix and matrix vector products. And so what happens in one of these, I did basically a request for, for government agencies or medical agencies to take a closer look at this, is basically some bits are for the notebook, other bits are for machine learning, so more. And then even more bits would be assigned for quantum machine learning to simulate the qubits. They don't have noise and they're compatible with today's machine learning workflows. So there's really not anything to reinvent the wheel with. It's a working technology, and just results have to get better and more utilities have to be found. So the limiting factor is how much quantum physics helps. And this ties in with the original kind of query that I had in this talk, is basically, starting off with a quantum algorithm that you're for sure, can't be dequantized. And maybe you have different approaches of just creating dequantized algorithms that haven't been thought of in a traditional or conventional way. And I haven't found much to support this. I know Qiskit, they have dynamics, and you can effectively, once we understand quantum physics simulated, is there an even better way, in the future that may be viable to, simulate, modified quantum physics in the future? And then, so what this is basically a node is very similar to a qubit. So both don't like to go wider. So you've never heard of a wide neural network. They're typically called deep learning neural nets because as the number of nodes or qubits increases, you have that many nodes or that many qubits times those respective number of outputs. And that goes, that's computationally demanding. It's not an efficient process for the computer to do. So that, in my opinion, that's where the limit in qubits. But again, we can cut these circuits and get better at cutting circuits in order to get, higher qubit circuits if we need more dimensions in our algorithms. Okay. And then this next one is basically, this is some of the code, and it's all up on GitHub. So this 83, 84, 85, these references here is basically you just download the notebooks. And in Qiskit, you typically run inside of Qiskit's free. So say, for instance, they don't charge you for using their CPUs inside of Qiskit Lab. Whereas the other two, for Circ and PennyLane, I typically use Colab, and I'll open those up in Colab and then, run them in Colab. And Qiskit, you don't always have to install, right? So a lot of these things are installed, when you open up a notebook, and then a lot of times you can just start coding, which is the benefit there. But there's different modifications to all of these as far as which way you want the circuit to look, as far as color, no color. And the big market with this is basically like global machine learning. They say $90 billion by 2026. Machine learning compound annual growth rate of close to 40%. Now for quantum machine learning, and there'll probably be more and more of these based on the sandbox AQs and the classics and the TerraQuantums and BASFs, is 30% compound annual growth rate by the end of the decade to be $5 billion. And then you see healthcare data accounts for 30% of the world's data volume at 36% compound annual growth rate. AI and healthcare going huge at $428 billion. So we'll see as far as what part of the pie, QML/QiML will take with this. And a lot of times, yes, you can without reinventing the wheel or changing your notebook completely, do some modifications, import, your quantum machine learning library, and then be off in a slightly different direction with it too. But 44% compound annual growth rate, which is good. And global AI medical imaging, CAGR, or the growth rate, 45%. Radiomics, which is something I see QiML, having a good opportunity to penetrate pretty well. There's a number of algorithms that, basically, it's going to take more RAM, or it's going to take, more resources to run at a similar speed. But figure with the quantum processing, we'll see, what it does for radiomics. Now, these are all available up on GitHub, and everywhere from 1 to 18. The top ones are more white papers. The bottom ones are more presentations. So, for instance, if you want, to port, to create a port using PyTorch or PennyLane or PyTorch and Qiskit, that's a separate discussion. Another one on quantum parameters, some FDA talks and discussions, and then a lot of code there too. Not just the medical images as well. And then here's a fair number of quotes here, is basically Eric Schmidt. So this is Google, Eric Schmidt. He says, thanks to rapid advances in GPU hardware and quantum information science, we're finally able to harness AI for more specialized applications that will have a profound impact on our world. So he is now the chairman of Sandbox AQ, and Jack Hidary, who I've shared this quote before, using all of this on GPUs, that was in another Sandbox AQ. And then the Cicero is basically, they're the ones that put a lot of this together. And I read this paper more than once, read it once and then the sections, independently. But, basically they have high hopes for QiML as well. We anticipate a wealth of future developments drawing from quantum mechanics, quantum computing, and classical machine learning. So keep in mind, it has its roots in classical machine learning. And then also, this is lastly, so this is NIH and quantum information science. So most government organizations are well aware of quantum. So NIH is actually engaged in quantum information science research through the National Quantum Initiative to ensure researchers benefit from new technologies. NIH has been involved earlier in the transition to shape the development of new tools and algorithms. It's like, if there's a practical technology readily available, low cost, it definitely deserves to be explored. Now, I haven't gone through all the papers from earlier, as far as these academic papers that have used QiML. I know, some of them are bigger papers, but I'm not quite sure which of those are NIH funded, like has the NIH actually previously funded QiML? I would still need to do this. And then also with the DOE, they've collaborated to explore opportunities at the intersection of quantum computing, biomedical research, and data science. Okay, so taking everything to the nth degree, basically saying like, I just code in PennyLane all week, those types of things is a little bit different from like, an exploratory work of, something that there's many things called quantum, right? So which is practical today. And I believe the next steps should be to implement collaborative communities based on the human QiML team interactions, and to perform efficacy testing, like is it efficacious or is it effective, on the research setting with additional refinements, further implement real-world data in a community setting with prospective standards, right? As far as using this technology, how much, if anything, is it deemed different from other, generative AI in general is not a huge thing with the NIH, but say this is not generating new data. This is trying to get better utilities or, better accuracies, those types of things as well. So are there any questions regarding any of the slides? And then we'll get to Harold's comments just in a sec here. Okay. Okay, so Harold's comment. So do you have experience using QBoost? Um, Not as much as far as this optimizer. So it's quantum gradient boost. And most of the notebooks, like I said, like if I try to change from an SGD, stochastic gradient descent or atom optimizer, I don't have as much, success as opposed to just sticking with the optimizer. Or if it's Qiskit, like a Cobula, I tend to stick with it for until I can make it perfect and then maybe switch to something else for that one. Yeah, so it just depends on the algorithm, and it's actually a tricky thing to get an exactly same classical machine learning model. And I had one that was pretty close. It's a Stanford, it's an older transfer learning model compared to the quantum transfer learning model. And even the way it would process images, you see that there's some differences there, or the pre-processing of images. So you try to make everything as close as you can. And like I said, I saw the greatest kind of separation when the data set was the best, because I had a 2 class, 4 class, 10 class, and 44. And the 10 class is the one where I saw, kind of like the quantum transfer learning model kind of separate itself, which makes sense. Anybody else? Yeah, and it's good to see, other people kind of working on this every day. And there are, a fair amount of the research papers are for QiML are PennyLane. They're mostly PennyLane, like most of the ones that I've seen. Okay, so Harold had another question here. He says, are you finding QML/QiML can get better predictions using different algorithms? Yes, like a good research study for everybody to do is to find a quantum model that works good enough in your specific area and make different changes to the quantum algorithm. This is a good study to do, and it should even for the future, as things are even better understood, as far as like I have this data set with 10,000 images, which exact quantum algorithm can we use now? The papers I'm seeing now are just basically like, we'll use this algorithm for this data set, and then once you change it, use a different algorithm, that type of stuff. But yeah, so a tip with this, Harold, is basically start with the embedding. So the embedding is typically like a Hadamard gate, a rotational gate. They're not trainable, so meaning that the parameters are frozen, so if it's pi over 2 for, an RY gate. And the one that worked the best for me is a HRY. Now its output is actually the sine wave, and the sine wave corresponds to the surface area of a Bloch sphere. So I think there's more to go in depth with that, right? Like, since it corresponds to that, then if we add another class or add another couple hundred images, then the quantum physics, increases the accuracy by this. But yes, a very good study to do are your own algorithm prototypings. I've done 4 of them, 4 big studies. And, keep everything else the same. Start with the embedding, right? So I'm talking about rotational embeddings, and you can also try like amplitude typically. You could try basis, which is just like not gates or not, rotational gates. But start with the embedding. And then when you have a good embedding, then with the layers in the model that you have a good understanding of, increase the layer, like 1 layer, keeping the embedding, and the same thing. The second run, 2 layers, third layer, third run, 3 layers, keep the embedding. And I got it twice where it was 8 layers, and that was my best number of layers for trainable, if I included 8 trainable layers with the embedding, I got it twice that was my best result. So, and you come up with those things and you have to keep testing it, and, you keep running. Was there anything else with that, Harold, or did anybody else have any other questions? And you could feel free to come off mute. You can also do the camera too. I guess the same. So the other stuff, and I don't think, oh, go ahead, Harold.
No, it's okay. Go ahead.
Yeah, the H2O, not as much. So the auto ML, it reminds me of the hyperparameter tuning, like it just selects whatever hyperparameter. It goes through a bunch of different configurations for hyperparameters and finds the ones that are best for you. Now, as far as what this one reminds me of is the Torch Quantum team at MIT, is they've done stuff like this to find, say optimal algorithms, these types of things. I'm under the impression that we're just a little stuck with the gate model now because there's been so many papers, and I don't think anybody's come out and said like my algorithm is significantly better for classifying this because of this, right?
Right.
But
So H2O and Data Robot are not quantum programs; they're machine learning programs.
right,
So Auto H2O is open source, and Data Robot is heavily paid. But like Data Robot will go through and it'll analyze your data. It'll analyze, which things are better predictors than others. It'll add columns if it needs to add columns to make for better predictions. It'll run it through a series of algorithms to figure out which ones might be closest. So it'll take like 5% of your data and run it through a suite of algorithms. And from that, it'll whittle it down to like 10. And then it'll run it through many sets of parameters for all those, knowing how those have worked over time, because they have like a million or 100 million ML programs that have been created through predictors that have been created through Data Robot.
yeah,
So honestly, they need you, but because we need to get them into the quantum world, because we need
yeah.
to
I
get away
think
from gate programming into algorithms.
yeah, I think the best thing, I mean, for you for this question is to just post it in the Xanadu discussion forum, and
Xanadu?
yeah, that's PennyLane's. Xanadu owns PennyLane. If you post it in there, get the idea in their mind. And what my experience with all these things like Qiskit Slack or others too, or I do the ticket,
Mm,
which is Quantinium, is that a lot of times you don't get the immediate answer, and it's just like you're chipping away at it, like you're trying to improve your own results. But a lot of times the answer doesn't come right away. So say for instance,
mm,
like I know there's at least one person, Nathan Killerian. He knows deep learning very, very well, and he says it's actually easier to do quantum with deep learning or quantum machine learning. But anyways, if you ask the question, that's probably not something I can do because I don't have access over PennyLane, as far as
sure.
those types of things. But I think we're headed in that direction. I would say any type of technology that it's gaining all this support from these organizations saying like drop everything and just run quantum algorithms on GPUs is what it sounds like. It makes sense to start asking these more automated questions, or questions related to automation. And
Right.
yeah, I would ask that same exact question that you put in the chat there. And there's classical minded people that work at PennyLane, because we draw
Mm,
from classical machine learning, that would understand that, and they would probably keep that in mind.
okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've talked to both companies. They're like quantum. Um, we're busy on large language models at the moment. I'm like, you're gonna miss the boat.
Well,
Somebody's gonna fill that space because it's fillable. As
yeah, I
soon
would
as
say,
there's an ROI for anything, that's just gonna explode, and they're gonna be a year behind.
yeah. Now, me presenting helps some, and then the rest of the industry, like the BASFs and Sandbox
Uh,
AQs and these bigger organizations, they're saying that they're just using GPUs with quantum algorithms. It'll help drive this stuff, but there is still a contingency that want it to work perfectly with a quantum hardware. And like I said, I guess in a realistic standpoint, with all these things kind of going against it and going for QiML, that I don't see that happening. Maybe like one or two thing happening at a time over time, right? But
right.
yeah, I don't. Some of them that's the focus that I'm seeing, because I'm seeing patient data and I'm seeing noise over in quantum. So patient data makes sense with QiML, and no decoherence, no availability issues or cost, much cost. But Yeah, I would, and this goes for everybody else here and everybody else listening to the recording is ask these questions because a lot of times things are just floating in the air, and this is important because I've spent a lot of time running models, and having something like that would help too. Automation. Anything
Yeah.
else, Harold?
Um, did you hear about the recent release from Aramco?
No.
Aramco is a Saudi Arabia oil company. They're like the third, second largest oil company in the world. He said one of the guys there said that they have a way to use quantum machine learning. They're going to start implementing in production, probably worth billions. And it's using an annealing process to do machine learning because annealing does optimization really well, and quantum machine learning is just a set of optimization problems. If you get down to the basic math, it's just optimization problems.
Uh-huh.
I mean, it doesn't have to be perfectly optimized, but annealing tends to get around local minimums. And so most of the stuff I'm seeing out of annealing is better predictions consistently.
Yeah. A long time ago, maybe back in 2021, that company, because I remember the oil stuff, and coincidentally, Sandbox AQ's newsletter today said that GPUs are the new oil, and NVIDIA, this is a little bit paraphrased, NVIDIA is
Uh,
leading the charge.
uh,
But that's, yeah. So when you say QML annealing, I think the Fujitsu simulated annealer, but they could also be
yeah,
using physical.
I don't think they're using D-Wave because they would have said so. I
Yeah, I
think it is a
appreciate that. I
Japanese
appreciate you
company.
bringing that up because it's been a while since I heard that, and you know that organization. But thanks, Harold. Anybody else? Ron, did you have something?
Yeah, I just wanted to have a follow on to what Harold was talking about in when he first started. Um, it sounded like what you're talking about was feature selection at the beginning of a ML project. Um, and it turns out there are quantum algorithms that can assist with that. Depending on how wide your data set is, if you've got dozens of features, you can use the quantum optimization techniques as long as you can turn them into like a quadratic unconstrained binary optimization or essentially a graph problem. There are
Mm-hmm.
quantum algorithms that will pick the best feature selection for you or get you closer than just guessing at it.
Yeah. And I just want to say with one thing with medical is like, if it's a single image that counts, it really matters. So having any type of noise or decoherence. But in other areas, in other fields, if it's something like we just need the best, you know, cost, or say for instance, we just need the better accuracy overall, right? And there's no lives at stake. It's just moving boxes around a warehouse. That's a case for other technologies. But um, yeah, I think it would be hard to even number 5 on the plant slide with this particular one, where it's having hardware come in at a later date. It would still need to show that if it's anywhere close to like touching patient data, and it has something, a noise component or decoherence or something like that, then it would need to be further
Mm-hmm.
explained. But yes, there's a number of technologies. It just depends on your application. So I've kind of researched a lot of them. Anything else, Harold, or anybody else? And I mean, just what I found with all of this is really get to the platform level, meaning the software libraries. And I was thinking back in all this, what was the most productive thing I did over benchmarks in the past several months? And I would really pinpoint it to the PennyLane. I took there's 10, basically sections in their help guide, and I researched them and I presented on them. And without doing that, I wouldn't have that background to do benchmarking studies or present with other medical related studies, and especially with code. But I would really take time to, number one, research if you haven't done Qiskit there's tutorials and classes and those types of things. Really take the time to really understand the software library that you want to focus on. And that'll help open up some things, in the future.
So Kevin, I finally broke down and decided to pay D-Wave their money for their week-long training course, which I'm going to take next week.
Yeah.
So it should be a lot of fun. Looks like it's pretty intense.
Yeah. It's such a, like, just to get to this point where I'm at, like, it's just because didn't really have a coding background, and I basically really got into this stuff in March. Is the defining moment in all this stuff is not the papers, nature papers and all these things that could be. It's really the libraries, because if it's not supported by a library, or unless it's like coming through the pipeline in the next version, then it's basically, as a researcher, you can't use it, right? So if you can use it in 5 years, it's too far away. So, but fortunately for us, Qiskit has done some things. And actually, there was some news with Qiskit. There's another QML. It was a company. Harold might know about this. But anyways, PennyLane has gone like way overboard with like the demos. There's like 27, 28 QML demos. And, adjoint differentiation and doing all these, squeezing the juice out of QML/QiML. But yeah, with the Qiskit stuff, there's another organization that's what they're focusing on. They posted it on LinkedIn. But anyways, we need number 2, right? With medical, we can't just have PennyLane as like a prominent, QML or QiML platform. Did you hear something too about that, Harold?
Do you see this going fairly quickly to it's all libraries? It's no gates. Here's the quantum algorithm. Here's the parameters you can use. You can swap them all around however you want. Here's the data. Send the data in. Here's the results to come out. So you can run them in a suite of pipelines with different sets of parameters. Just have them all run one after the other and compare the results at the end. So there's already ML pipelines that do this. I've used them before.
What are some of the names? Are they the same ones you put earlier?
It's just part of PyTorch.
Uh-huh.
Well, outside of QML, just quantum algorithms in general. You should check out Classic. They have a very interesting approach. Unfortunately, they're based in Israel, and I don't know if they've actually come back online yet. They basically shut down right in the middle of their hackathon, which I didn't get to start. But I like what they're doing is because, again, so it's like what you're talking about. You pick an algorithm, and you don't worry so much about what the gates are. The algorithm pops up. You fill out a parameter that's parameters to the algorithm. They're not parameters to the quantum thing, and that it'll take those and it'll generate the circuit for you. You don't have to build it at a gate level. It's actually pretty cool.
Generates the circuit, sends it through TCAT, whatever, optimizes it, compiles it, whatever, runs it, and then you get the results.
The other thing they do is you can actually set it up so you can send it to multiple live backends simultaneously, which is kind of a cool feature. So you can send it to IBM, you can send it to PennyLane, you can send it to D-Wave or Rigetti or somebody like that, and you can see which platform gave you the best performance. Of course, you have to have tokens and accounts with all those guys, but yeah.
Or Amazon Bracket will give you a bunch of those too.
Yeah, I see a lot of applications out there. For medical, I don't see quite as many, obviously, with QML and QiML, but yeah, there are a fair number that will make it too. But when I saw, Classic or Classic, with this Israel hospital saying GPUs in that case, and then Terra Quantum, saying and they've done benchmarking on real hardware, and they're saying double down on GPUs for business, like immediate business impact is what they said. So I once we, because we have the news, or we have basically the announcements that people are committed to the technology, and Sandbox AQ is just like, keeps posting regarding GPUs, technology, or GPUs and QiML, or GPUs and quantum algorithms. So it all come down to the results, right? So that's going to be the determining thing, right? Because NVIDIA's run a bunch, and I think it's like those. Well, say if we get news 3 times in a day on the 13th, if that happens again, like say the fall next Monday or the Monday after that, where it's just like accuracy plus 3%, and it was already high, or like mid to high 90s, for 3 different other people saying, oh, we got a new utility, or we were able to squeeze out a speed up, those types of things. That would be the next news that we hope to pop up.
Can you see people using GPUs and QIML to do ML perf algorithms?
I'm not as familiar with perf. I've just had one person. This is like it's a benchmark. Yeah. Yeah. Everything you can do with machine learning, you can do with QML or QiML.
Right.
Okay. But not everything you do with QiML, you can do with classical. And that's where I kind of need to touch up on, as far as which QiML algorithm can't you do, with classical. So yeah, I see a lot of these things happening, Harold, definitely. Automation, more benchmarking. I just did a really good benchmarking, like 17 different configurations, 5 runs each. And it was what stuck out. It's lightning.gpu, which is the, top tier of PennyLane's, devices, like 20 seconds. And then my top CPU was 60 seconds, and that was lightning.cocos. And then my second, which is lightning.qpu, and that was like 100. So it was almost twice as fast on the cocos compared to lightning. And they're both free, and whatever ran the fastest had the lowest cost and highest efficiency, because it used the less time on Colab's really cheap CPU. But many people are hungry for these GPUs, and the A100, by the way, was the best with standard deviation. So meaning that over the course of the 5 runs, it deviated the least from its time. And then the V100, which is the next GPU, that was the second, probably around the second for the fastest, but it had it had the worst deviation over the course of the 5 runs. So anyways, there's pairings. So when you get on Colab and you go to run this stuff in PennyLane, and you go to install lightning.gpu, and then you select the GPU in Colab, like the A100, then it's using that GPU, I believe, both to run different aspects of machine learning or data processing in the notebook, and then more importantly, in this case, to do the quantum algorithm, with machine learning. So, but yeah, it's just a single line of code. It's like pip install, PennyLane. I might be able to find it here, but yeah, like I said, with lightning.gpu, which is their top tier, unless you can get a better Cocos, which I haven't found at this time. That's still the top one.
Right. Yeah, kind of like that. I'd like the package to determine what runs in classical and what runs in quantum. Why do I have to know? I don't care.
Yeah, we could talk about that.
I just want a better answer in less time. From a business perspective, I'm looking at return on investment. I only care that it gives me better answers, or it runs in less time, or less energy, I suppose. I've seen calculations where it may take 1/1000th of the energy cost to run real quantum processing units to do the work.
Yeah,
at some point, if you can use them for LLM, because that's all AI, it's all machine learning, then you could do all that LLM stuff for thousands of the cost, you know, cooling and electricity and stuff like that. There's an ROI for that.
Yeah, and that's what I'm trying to get to, because I did, basically runtime, standard deviation, and then cost, efficiency. And that's not the hard part. The hard part is finding the models that you can say this definitively is exactly the same classical model as this, quantum based model. But here we have the quantum algorithm, here we have a classical algorithm. For me, that's typically harder. That's been the harder thing to find, because finding
From
the right
an ROI's perspective, that's interesting, but it's not important. Here's the problem. Here's the data set. What gives me the best answers? In some cases, it runs once a quarter. I don't care how long it takes. It could take a month. It doesn't matter to me. With other stuff, I'd like to run it every 20 seconds, but I don't have to calculate the prediction algorithm every 20 seconds. I just have to run it every 20 seconds. Typically, that doesn't have to run on a quantum computer at all. Once you have an algorithm that'll predict, it doesn't have to run on quantum. You can run in C# or whatever. You could run in machine learning code for all that, or machine language. The key is, can we get an algorithm that will predict better, and then can I run it in the time I need to run it?
Yeah, these are all good things, and I'm going to go deeper too, because this is my second big benchmarking, and then just
you're doing great. My personal opinion, you're about as far out there as anybody.
Yeah, I appreciate it. Anybody else? Anand or Ron? I don't know if it's just the holiday after the Thanksgiving, too much food, or those types of things, but
not enough beer.
Oh.
To the point of not worrying about how it gets done, then you probably want to let somebody else handle that. Because at this point in time, if you're going to use a quantum component, you need a quantum engineer to know where to insert it. You're not going to see anytime soon real quantum hardware being involved in the inference engine. Like you said, you could run it I could run an inference engine on a Raspberry Pi that runs pretty well. So once you have a trained ML machine, you can run it inside of an inference engine, and that's not the tough part. The tough part is the training and the number of epochs and the number of cycles you go through, and that's why we don't see real quantum hardware getting involved in those, because nobody on every cycle and on every call to a quantum step, you're going to have to wait for the queue, and nobody wants to do that. So quantum has to be ancillary at the moment. So like I said, at front end of your ML project, use it for feature selection, use it for what it does well, which is not like everybody knows, optimization and certain other algorithms. You're right. There, at some point, people won't care about it. Just like we don't care there's a GPU in our machine. We just know that the system knows how to use it, and it shovels off those computationally intensive jobs to it, and it just gets done. That'll eventually be what happens. But right now, you need somebody that knows what quantum can do and what it's not good at, and got to know where to inject it.
Yeah, that's all good information. I mean, you could say if you have deep learning neural network like a ResNet, with the quantum transfer learning model that a lot of people use, we run a quantum algorithm after that to assist with classification. And yes, it is specific. So if it's 2 classes, you need 4 qubits, like for the best performance. I've also seen, so you can run quantum algorithms before other classical machine learning neural nets, and it could be something as simple. I presented a couple of weeks ago as far as the preciseness of the training parameters for quantum. So say, for instance, they're set just like way too low, literally like it's 0.0000 whatever. And that's what's slowing things down. These types of things, right? But a lot of these things, aren't set in stone yet. And then we have trends that we're going through as far as like, okay, this is working best. And then, this is the next road. But I think they'll come around. Not every hardware, not every platform is fully on board of this is the way of doing it as QiML, and they still might have insight for it, 5 years down the road, being on some hardware device limitedly, just because that's how their research is set up. And these are like teams of like 5 or 7 people. But I think the real driver has been so far with the news, these big organizations signing on with GPUs and quantum algorithms, and then, performance, right? So if we can get the performance and we can cut circuits to make them smaller, run tensor networks to get to basically use qubits more efficiently, or do other things with state vector circuits that, that could be the path. Awesome. Anybody else? Any other last questions? Go ahead, Harold.
No, I just want to say thanks. Appreciate your talk today and interaction.
Yeah. So I should have everything up either tonight or tomorrow. And then it just it feels quieter around here. But with the holidays and everything, I plan to keep going. And obviously this is the big push. And I really think that healthcare and medical could benefit from the technology.
Oh, definitely.
Backing it up 10 different ways is a good way to go. And it's kind of doing research for other people in the hopes of basically, getting these products, like better products out and new iterations. So awesome. Anybody else? If not, so this has been discussion 111, Thursday, November 30th, 2023, for the Developers Seminar for Leading NIH Medical AI Activities and Programs in Quantum 2. Hope everybody has a good night and a productive rest of the week. Take care, everybody. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Thanks, Kevin.